My parents kicked me out for being gay, then asked to move in when their retirement fund disappeared. I never planned on coming out to my parents that night. It just happened. I was 19, home from my first year of college for winter break. My mom had been going through my laptop, something she'd done since I was a kid, claiming parents have a right to know. That's when she found the messages between me and Jason. I remember walking into the kitchen and seeing my parents sitting at the table, my laptop open between them. My dad's face was stone, my mom's eyes red from crying. "What is this?" Dad pushed the laptop toward me, his voice dangerously quiet. "I could have lied," said Jason was just a friend, but I was tired of hiding, of pretending to be someone I wasn't. "That's Jason," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "He's my boyfriend." The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Then Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Not in this house," he said. "I will not have a son who—" He couldn't even say it. "This is just a phase. You need help." "It's not a phase, Dad. This is who I am." Mom started sobbing. "Where did we go wrong? What will people think? The church?" "I'm still the same person," I said, feeling my eyes sting. "Nothing's changed." Dad stood up, towering over me like he did when I was a child. "Everything's changed. No son of mine is going to be gay. You either get help or you get out." I looked at my mom, hoping she'd say something, defend me somehow, but she just stared at the table, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," I pleaded, my voice cracking slightly. "Listen to your father, Alex," she whispered. "Please. We just want what's best for you." That's when I knew. They didn't love me. They loved the idea of me, the son they thought they had, not the real me. "I'll pack my things," I said. Dad nodded curtly. "You have until morning." That night was the longest of my life. I moved around my childhood bedroom, packing whatever would fit in my suitcase, clothes, a few books, my laptop. I could hear them downstairs, my mom crying, my dad's voice low and stern. They were discussing me like I was a problem to be solved, not their child in crisis. I sat on my bed and stared at the photos on my wall. Family vacations, holidays, my high school graduation just last year, my dad's arm around my shoulder, my mom beaming with pride. All fake, or at least conditional on me being exactly who they wanted me to be. I grabbed one photo, me and my younger sister Emily on the beach last summer, and tucked it into my bag. She was away at a friend's house tonight. Would they even tell her why I left, or would I just disappear, become someone they never mention again? I barely slept. When morning came, I shouldered my bag and walked downstairs. The house was quiet, still. I thought maybe they'd change their minds, that we'd talk again. Instead, I found a note on the counter with $200 bills. "When you're ready to get help and come back to God, we'll be waiting. No, I love you. No, we'll miss you. Just conditional acceptance I could never meet." I left the money on the counter and walked out, with just the $63 in my wallet and whatever I could carry. If they couldn't accept my love, I wouldn't accept their charity. But pride doesn't keep you warm in December. By nightfall, reality had set in. I had nowhere to go. I called Jason, but his parents were even more religious than mine. He offered to meet me, gave me what little cash he had, held me while I cried in his car, but he couldn't take me in. I spent that first night in a 24-hour diner, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu every few hours so they wouldn't kick me out. The waitress, Denise, seemed to understand. She kept my coffee cup full and looked the other way when I dozed off in the booth. At 5 a.m. she slipped me a piece of paper. "My nephew runs a youth center. They might be able to help." It was the first kindness I'd experienced since leaving home, and I nearly broke down right there. The next few months blurred together in my memory. Couch surfing with acquaintances from high school, a shelter for a few weeks when I had nowhere else, working whatever jobs I could find, dishwasher, gas station attendant, stocking shelves overnight, anything to keep moving forward. I called home once, about a month after I left. My sister answered. "Alex," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and anger. "Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I lied. "I just wanted to—" I heard my father's voice in the background. "Is that him? Give me the phone." "I have to go," I said quickly. "I love you, Em." "Alex, wait." But I had already hung up. That was the last time I spoke to any of them for 10 years. Somehow, through scholarships, loans, and working 3 jobs, I managed to finish college, computer science, like I'd always planned. My advisor, Dr. Chen, became the closest thing I had to a parent. He helped me find internships, wrote recommendations, even invited me for holidays when the dorms closed and everyone else went home. "You have a brilliant mind, Alex," he told me once. "Don't let your circumstances define your future." So, I didn't. I graduated with honors, landed a job at a tech firm, and started building my life. I worked harder than anyone else, stayed later, came in earlier, not just because I needed the money, but because I had something to prove. To myself, more than anyone. 3 years after graduation, I started my own consulting business. It was terrifying, but I'd already lost everything once. What more did I have to fear? The business grew steadily. I bought my first car that wasn't falling apart. Then my first house, small but mine. I started dating seriously, met Mark at a friend's birthday party, fell in love. Through it all, I kept a small box. Inside was the address of my parents' house, updated whenever I managed to find out they'd moved. Christmas cards I never sent. News clippings of my business successes. A Father's Day card I bought in a moment of weakness. Things I thought might someday bridge the gap. Once a year, usually around my birthday, I'd send them my new contact information. Just a simple note, in case you ever want to reach me. No response ever came. I went to therapy, a lot of therapy. Learned that what they did wasn't about me. It was about their own fears, their own limitations. Learned that I could build my own family from the people who chose to love me exactly as I was. Mark moved in last year. We talked about marriage, about adopting someday. For the first time, I felt truly happy, truly at peace. The ache of my parents' rejection never fully disappeared, but it had faded to a dull throb I could mostly ignore. Then, last Tuesday, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was confused when I opened the door to find my parents standing on my porch. They looked older, of course. Dad's hair was completely gray now, and Mom had deep lines around her eyes. But what struck me most was how small they seemed. My dad, who had always been this towering presence in my life, looked almost frail. "Alex," Mom said, her voice breaking. She stepped forward like she wanted to hug me, but stopped when I didn't open my arms. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice didn't sound angry, just tired. "Can we come in?" Dad asked. "Please. We need to talk." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, to let them feel a fraction of the rejection I'd felt. But another part, the part that had spent years in therapy working through the abandonment, was curious. So I stepped aside. They sat awkwardly on my couch, looking around at the photos of me and Mark, the life they'd chosen not to be part of. "You have a nice home," Mom said, attempting a smile. "Thank you." I didn't sit. "Why are you here, after 10 years? They exchanged glances. Dad cleared his throat. "We've had some difficulties," he began. "Financial problems." I waited, arms crossed. "Your father's company," Mom continued when Dad fell silent. "They had this retirement investment program. We put everything into it." "It was a scam," Dad said bitterly. "The whole thing. 25 years of savings gone." I felt a twinge of sympathy, quickly replaced by wariness. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I still don't understand why you're here." Mom looked at me, her eyes pleading. "We have nowhere to go, Alex. The bank foreclosed on the house last week. We've been staying in a motel, but," her voice cracked, "we can't afford it much longer." And then it clicked. "You want to stay with me?" It wasn't a question, but Dad nodded anyway. "Just until we get back on our feet. I've applied for a few jobs, but at my age..." He gestured helplessly. "What about the church?" I asked. "All those people you were so worried about, can't they help?" "We're too ashamed," Mom whispered. Everyone trusted Robert with their investments too. Half the congregation lost everything. And Emily? I asked, thinking of my sister. Can't you stay with her? Dad shifted uncomfortably. She's in a studio apartment, no room. Besides, she's angry with us right now. I raised an eyebrow. About what? Mom looked away. She said we should have reached out years ago, that what we did to you was unforgivable. We haven't spoken in months. So Emily had taken my side after all these years. The knowledge warmed something in me, even as I processed what was happening. I looked at them, really looked at them. These people who had thrown me out, who had chosen their reputation and beliefs over their own son, who hadn't checked if I was alive or dead for 10 years. Now, they wanted shelter under my roof. Do you remember what you said to me? I asked quietly. The last time we spoke. Dad looked down. Alex, that was a long time ago. You said no son of mine is going to be gay. You gave me until morning to get out. We were shocked, Mom pleaded. We didn't understand. Things were different then. Different? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was 10 years ago, not 50, and I didn't hear from you last month when gay marriage was legalized nationwide. Nothing's changed, except that now you need something from me. We made a mistake, Dad said. We see that now. A mistake? My voice rose. A mistake is forgetting to pick someone up from the airport. You abandoned your teenage son for being gay. I was alone. I had nothing. Images flashed through my mind, sleeping in my car in freezing temperatures, working until my hands bled, crying myself to sleep in strange places, wondering what I had done to deserve being thrown away. Where was your Christian charity then? I continued, unable to stop now that the floodgates had opened. Where was your parental love when I was skipping meals to pay tuition? Where were you when I graduated, when I started my business, when I bought this house? Where were you for any moment of my life for the past decade? And we're sorry, Mom cried. So sorry. But you're doing well now. You've made a good life. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us? Find it in my heart? I repeated. My heart is the one thing you never cared about. You cared about appearances, about what your church friends would think, about your narrow view of what a son should be, but never about my heart. Dad's expression hardened. You're being cruel, Alex. Cruel? I stared at him in disbelief. Was it cruel when you told me I wasn't your son anymore? Was it cruel when Mom sat silent while you threw me out? Was it cruel when neither of you called to see if I was alive or dead for 10 years? I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them feel as bad as I had. It was about setting boundaries, about honoring the life I'd built. There's a shelter on Maple Street, I said finally. They have programs to help people get back on their feet. I'll call ahead, let them know you're coming. Dad's face hardened. A shelter? Where your parents? Were my parents, I corrected. You stopped being my parents the day you decided your beliefs were more important than your child. Mom was crying now. Please, Alex, we have nowhere else to go. I had nowhere to go at 19, I replied. Somehow I managed. This isn't Christian forgiveness, Dad said, his voice taking on that familiar judgmental tone. Maybe not, but it is justice. I walked to the door and opened it. I'll give you the address for the shelter. They sat there for a moment, as if they couldn't believe this was happening. Finally, Dad stood, helping Mom to her feet. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Turning your back on family. I met his gaze steadily. I learned from the best. Mom paused at the door, her hand trembling as she reached toward me but stopped short of touching me. I miss you, Alex. I've missed you every day. The words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, just a moment, I was that scared 19-year-old again, desperate for his mother's love. But I wasn't that boy anymore. Then you shouldn't have thrown me away, I said softly. Actions have consequences. This is yours. After they left, I sat on my couch and cried, not for them, but for the 19-year-old boy who had only wanted his parents' love, for all the birthdays and holidays spent alone, for the wedding they'd never attend, the grandchildren they'd never know. When Mark came home, he found me still there, staring at nothing. "Babe, what's wrong?" He dropped his bag and was at my side in an instant. I told him everything, about my parents showing up, about their request, about sending them away. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked, voice hoarse. "Am I a terrible person for turning away my homeless parents?" Mark took my hands in his. "Alex, listen to me. They abandoned you when you were barely an adult. They left you with nothing. They made no attempt to contact you for 10 years, and now they show up, not because they miss you or love you, but because they need something? That's not love. That's opportunism." I nodded, but still felt the weight of guilt pressing down on me. "What would have happened if you'd let them stay?" Mark continued. "They'd have moved in, taken over our home, probably made snide comments about our relationship. They'd have used you until they didn't need you anymore, then gone back to ignoring you existed." "You're right," I said. "I know you're right. You set a boundary. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a healthy one." The next day, I called the shelter and made an anonymous donation, enough to fund 2 spots for 6 months. I wasn't heartless. They were still human beings in need, and I had the means to help without sacrificing my boundaries. But I also made an appointment with my therapist, because some wounds, even when they've scarred over, can still hurt when pressed. 3 days later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Alex. It's Emily. My sister. I hadn't heard her voice in 10 years. She'd been 16 when I left." My voice caught. "How are you?" "I'm good," she said. "I should have called years ago. I'm so sorry, Alex." "It's not your fault," I said automatically. "I know, but," she sighed, "I should have tried harder to find you, to stay in touch." "You were a kid, Em. I don't blame you." "I blamed them," she said firmly. "Still do. I know they came to see you. They told me what happened." I tensed. And I told them they got exactly what they deserved. The fierceness in her voice made me smile, despite everything. "You were right to turn them away, Alex. They're not sorry for what they did to you. They're sorry they need help now." The validation from the only other person who truly understood my parents made something ease in my chest. "I'd like to see you," she said. "If you want to, no pressure." "I'd like that," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I'd like that a lot." A week later, I got a letter, no return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. "Alex, I understand now what we did to you. Sitting in this shelter, surrounded by people who have lost everything, I finally understand how you must have felt that night, scared, alone, betrayed by the people who should have protected you. Your father won't admit it, but I need to. We were wrong. Not just for coming to you for help, but for everything. For forcing you out. For the silence. For putting our reputation above our child. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I am proud of the man you've become, despite us, not because of us. The strength it must have taken to build a life from nothing. I see that now. We'll be moving to Florida next month. Your father's brother has offered us his garage apartment. You won't have to worry about us showing up again. I hope someday, if you want, we might talk, really talk, not as people who need something from you, but as a mother who misses her son. With love and deepest regret." I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Not thrown away, but not answered either. Some bridges can't be rebuilt overnight, if ever. Mark found me staring out the window later that evening. "Still thinking about them?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Thinking about family," I corrected. "The one we choose versus the one we're born with." He rested his chin on my shoulder. And I'm grateful for the one I've chosen." I turned to face him. "The family that loves me for exactly who I am." He smiled, kissed me softly. "That's the only kind worth having." The weekend after, Emily came to visit. She burst into tears when she saw me, throwing her arms around me like she was afraid I'd disappear again. We spent hours catching up, sharing stories of the years we'd missed. "I always kept track of you," she admitted, showing me a folder on her phone filled with screenshots of my business website, social media profiles, news articles about my company. "I was so proud of you, but I was scared to reach out. Scared you'd hate me for staying with them." "I could never hate you," I told her. "You were a kid in an impossible situation." She told me how she'd gradually distance herself from our parents as she got older, how their rejection of me had opened her eyes to their conditional love. "They only accept you if you fit their mold," she said, and I decided I didn't want to live like that anymore. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "Don't feel guilty about what you did," she whispered. "They need to learn that actions have consequences." That night I slept peacefully. The weight I'd carried for 10 years, the need for their approval, the hurt of their rejection, felt lighter somehow. Not gone completely, but different. I had stood my ground, I had honored my worth, and in doing so I had finally freed myself from waiting for the acceptance that never came. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't "I forgive you," but "I deserve better." And sometimes the hardest lesson for parents to learn is that children grow up to become the judges of their childhood. My parents had judged me and found me wanting. Now it was my turn. And I had chosen myself. 3 months later, I received another letter from my mother. Inside was a check, not a large amount, but significant, with a note. "Your father doesn't know about this. Consider it the beginning of paying back what we owe you." I tore up the check and sent it back with a simple note. "I don't want your money." I never did. What I had wanted was something they couldn't give me with a check. Unconditional love, acceptance, a family that stood by me no matter what. But I had that now, not from them, but from the family I'd built, from Mark, from Emily, from friends who had stood by me through everything. And in the end, that was worth more than anything they could have given me, because this love came without conditions, without judgment, without strings. This love was real.